Before we get into it, Sony State of Play happened today at 5 p.m. Eastern time. I'll take a look at it and sort of go over what they've shown. Maybe sort of summarize what they did show. They also released a press release prior to it because they didn't want to give anybody like the wrong impression. Basically, they didn't show at E3 this year, and as a result, everybody's been sort of waiting for their response. And this isn't really what that is. They've already stated that it will not show God of War, it will not show any Horizon Zero Dawn, and it will not show PSVR 2, all of which have been announced, all of which should have news coming out sometime, maybe within this next year. But this is more of a focus on Deathloop, which is their next big exclusive release coming up. And it will also focus on indie titles, which, as we'll see, seem to give an update to a bunch of titles we've already seen before, but we haven't heard much from since. So yeah, we'll be able to take a look at that. So let's get started. I like how they start off with mystery. Like they don't really tell you what's going on with this. They just give you the title until you see the Moss character. I will point out that the graphics don't look particularly next gen. Um, so this is definitely being developed for the original PlayStation VR, so it has the widest um, available user base, I'd say. You can kind of tell it's PlayStation 4 era graphics, low resolution textures, um, but the world seems a bit bigger than it did in the first go around. I think basically what this shows is we can sort of expect the same amount of good game design that we did in the last Moss, which is still highly regarded as one of the um, better examples of VR platforming type games. What I'd say is kind of interesting is they said it's indie publishers, but you'll probably notice throughout this entire stream that the quality of graphics and production is significantly higher than I think what we've typically called indie in the past. So you can tell like there's a ton of art design in this, and a lot of style, which though it might be done on a much smaller budget than say like a PlayStation Studios title, it still looks like a potentially like $1 million game here, with some sort of publishing backing, perhaps. I don't want to speak for the Ilphonic team, but um, it is like one of those games that requires a lot of time and a lot of development effort, likely with some sort of budget backing it. Other than that, I kind of feel like it looks a little bit like a Splatoon in the colorfulness and frenetic aspect of the gameplay. There's definitely like this move towards these battle royale type games, because if they are successful, they can make tons and tons of money. So kind of like they're looking for like that drop in the hat where there's a rush of interest in around the game designing gameplay experience. They can pull in tons of money initially. Likewise, here's another one. Um, Not talking about the game design or the art direction or anything like that, but you'll notice that again, it's another um, indie title with really really high production quality, which says something about the tools that are available for people. Both Unity and Unreal have significantly improved the types of tools that are available and at what price, to allowing sort of any game developer to get access to these really awesome uh, game development. tools that are of high production quality. It's really as much art as you want to throw it at. It will kind of support and allow you to build these sort of things um, at the level of professional game developers. Um, what I will point out though is a lot of these games are seasonal. Like they have season games where they can sort of have updates in the future that help increase its profitability, or like a multiplayer online game, or like a battle royale type game. And I think this actually speaks to how funding is achieved a little bit. Um, People who put money into games, invest in games, are far more eager to do it when you can show that you can get long term profitability out of it, not just the original, whatever, $20 to $70 price tag initially. Instead, it's, can I get a freemium model that can extract tons and tons of money out of players? And if you've got a good pedigree in your development team, you can actually get some pretty good investment dollars to sort of fund your production, which you may be seeing in these like high production, quote unquote, indie titles that look to have some sort of publisher and or investment dollars backing it. I'll point out that this is another game that was shown. I don't know how long ago. I'd say almost a year ago, at one of the other Sony stated plays. I think one of the early ones that focused on indie titles. But um, this is kind of a theme that we're seeing. Is some of the games that we're seeing in the state of play are games that we had seen before, and now we're getting updates on as they get closer to probably a release date. Indie titles are kind of hard to peg down with release dates because you know they tend to be playing or like developing with you know less than 30 people in their development team. But you know now we get like release dates out of it, when the developers are much more sure about the release dates. And another quick tidbit too is uh, a lot of the indie developers will use like a Sony State of Play to get in front of a bunch of eyes and to gauge interest, which also helps them secure more funding if they're like truly an indie title that are looking for more secure funding to finish the development out. So this is another thing that's kind of interesting. Again, this is that sort of battle royale type game that is kind of a take on a Fortnite or something like that. It's thematically different, and the gameplay is different as well. But what you keep seeing with these is something that I think Fortnite kind of brought in there, which is like the wacky. It doesn't matter what the theme is, but like this game is, like sort of like a Dynasty Warriors looking type game that uses like Asian mythology as its design style. But then you see things like disco skins and weird things like that that are kind of like a, I don't know. It seems like the influence of Fortnite that has like a definitely wacky bent to it, sneaking its way into these other, um, you know, battle royale, you know, multiplayer games online that are supposed to be sticky enough to, you know, get long term play out of it and long term profitability. Again, it looks like there's investment dollars behind this, and this is sort of the type of game that investors enjoy investing in because it's the ones that, if successful, can turn a lot of money. There you go. There's that battle royale action. Um, you can kind of think of it as like the the social media boom, like when investors were like dumping money into like social networks because basically there was a proof that one worked, and once there's proof that one worked, there's proof that others could work, and a lot of investors would just plunk down tons of money on the gamble that one of them would do well enough to give them like a 10x return. And these battle royale games are kind of similar. It's like you see investment dollars go into them because if one of them is successful, you can see success like Fortnite, which has made billions of dollars at this point. And this game is Sifu, another one that we saw at another Sony State of Play, That seems to be some sort of, modern brawler slash, you know, roguelike game where I think you age up, and as you age up, you gain more skills and can probably make further progress and the like. Um, so this might be an interesting, single player game that's not looking to cash in on, multiplayer games, online multiplayer games. One that's actually like a straight up interesting take on, a kind of tried and true game genre. And I'm looking forward to it. This one looks pretty neat. I also like how they use their age up sort of idea with their roguelike, I assume, to show that like their original release date of 2021 has been updated to be early 2022. Again, real indie publishers end up not being able to stick dates. And actually, here's another one that I'm kind of excited about. I'll let the narrator talk. So, Super Brothers are one of the first like indie game publishers that made it big, for their. Oh, I'm blanking on the title of the game, but they tend to have pretty far out their conceptual stuff. Um, and they show this early again in another Sony State of Play as just like a quick demo of I think the jets flying around. But now we get to see like a more fleshed out concept of what the gameplay will be like, because it's probably within the year to be released. You can see them talking about this, that like the focus is not on resource extraction and building, probably to separate itself from things like No Man's Sky, which you could see that there's some parallels here, but this seems to be more of like a contemplative game, relaxing game where it's more about observing and exploring than it is about building and you know amassing resources to whatever, build space stations and whatnot. I'd like to point out that, sort of as I said, it started off as a true indie game where there's probably three developers working on core gameplay mechanics that just felt good and felt like it targeted what they wanted. And I guarantee you, when they had shown it at Sony's last state of play, it was probably to help them secure more investment dollars so that they could finish out the production of the title, if not getting money from Sony if it's like a timed exclusive, but it's not clear if that's actually the case right now. And this does not appear to be an indie title. I think there's a portion of this state of play where they sort of focus on Sega titles, um, which I can't remember if this was the case. I won't sort of comment on my feelings towards this type of game. I do recall them showing stuff on this, and again in another state of play. Uh, but what I will say is very strange to me, and you see this in a lot of Japanese titles. Again, I'm not sure if this actually is a Japanese title, but sure, it has the hallmarks of one. But it's the weird like captured English dubbing that they kind of play in like random clips, like strung together, and if you listen to it, it just makes no sense together, and I really dislike that. This happened actually during E3 with Square Enix's Final Fantasy. Is it Origins? The one that's sort of like their response to like the Souls types games. And if you listen to that trailer, it's just like you listen to the dialogue that's been captured. It's just so weird. This is a little bit better compared to the Demon Slayer that we just saw. And I've never actually played the Yakuza games, but someone else could probably clarify whether or not this is in the within the universe of it, because it certainly has the RPG elements, the wackiness of all of it, and if it's not within the same universe, then this is like weirdly uh, 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 like a an homage or to those games. But I can't imagine that this isn't something that's within like the Yakuza universe. Maybe I like to think of them like if Shenmue was on drugs, because it's the lineage of the Yakuza games follow from where Shenmue like started, um, but ended up just going down the path of like really odd, um, in most because of the director behind the titles. But I'm almost certain that that's within its universe. I can safely say we are outside of indie titles at this point. We are now focusing on the bigger PS5 releases, that I think are exclusive or time exclusive. Obviously, um, this isn't. This has been released on PC as well, but it's a console exclusive at least. It's actually kind of cool about this is I expected this to be a straight like PC or PS4 port onto the PS5, and beyond the increased frame rates and resolutions and whatnot. But there's actually some interesting add-ons to this that I'm not even sure on the PC version. Um, and beyond like the extra bosses and new weapons, it's this stuff that they're showing, like the support skeleton, the buddy bot, um, the like the delivery cannon, jump ramp. All these things are actually there to modify the core gameplay loop, which is the like the just exploration part. Um, and these might actually like fundamentally change the game in a significant way, especially in like the free play aspects of it. I'll be really curious to see how you know the director's cut of Death Stranding, now that's had you know 2 years now since it was originally released, like how much those uh, changes have actually improved the overall gameplay. And here's the meat of the whole um, state of play, which is I think why they called it, is basically Deathloop is the next major PS5 exclusive from Arcane Studios, um, which it's the French-based side of it. Arcane has an Austin-based Texas studio, and they also have the Leon uh, French studio as well. Uh, the Leon group, I think, were responsible for a lot of earlier Arcane Studios works. The Austin studio is relatively new, and they're working on some of the Xbox exclusives right now. But I will state that this is a Bethesda published Arcane Studio game that's currently owned by Microsoft, but is a PlayStation exclusive. Uh, Presumably an indefinite exclusive, because if Sony actually paid for um, they paid for the development of this title, then there's a good chance that this might not make it to Xbox at all. PC, on the other hand, may be different, but certainly could be a PlayStation, like a true PlayStation exclusive that won't make its way to the Xbox. It's a bit of speculation though, but they haven't shown anything about this releasing on Xbox, and it's either because it's like a marketing partnership deal where Sony pays for a lot of the marketing dollars, and that's why they get like like probably like a year exclusivity, or they actually paid for the development. If that's the case, then it could definitely be a PS5 exclusive period. So this game definitely shares like the pedigree of its like brethren, uh, because you can see a lot of like the core mechanics um, that are pretty consistent with arcane games. Um, for one, you have like the teleporting from point A to point B, um, and in general, the way it controls it looks very similar. So I think for people who are fan of arcane studios, their level design first and foremost, which tends to be excellent, um, plus their core gameplay. If you're really a fan of that, then I think you can sort of expect the same experience that you got out of Dishonored, except in in Deathloop, which is conceptually different than those games than Dishonored. So in this piece right here, it kind of goes over the more finite mechanics of the game that you should be able to expect. Um, it is like a roguelike game in its function, again, because you can die and respawn and gives you more opportunity to explore the game. Um, and I feel like this is like a genre that's really picked up on the PS5 because of the super fast SSD allows quick reload of game state, which allows things like roguelikes to be far more satisfying because it doesn't take a long time for you to get back from death to being in the game again. As they kind of explained here, there's as with most roguelikes, you build up your weaponry and you build up your abilities um, in playthrough by playthrough. But what they kind of state here is that there's a sort of virtual currency in this game that allows you to um, buy your sort of like loadout per new game that allows you to sort of play it differently, but not as like a you progressively get all your stuff. It's you get to pick and choose with your currency what weapons and abilities you want to go with, uh, or like load out on in each gameplay pass. And if you can't see the like the pedigree of Arcane in this, or maybe if you've never played Dishonored, you may not be sure what I'm talking about. But for those who have, and I would recommend everybody playing it, especially if you're a fan of design, because, like I said earlier, Dishonored has some of the most incredible level designs. They give you like multiple pathways through things, and it's really uh, deliberate design. And I think it's why people like it so much. But it really looks like you can expect a lot of that from this. And I also point out that there's some strange dystopian views in this game. Like Dishonored, it tends to be a commentary on like I don't know, like fascism and politics in a kind of subtle way, and it seems to be that there's more of this, albeit extremely well extreme, but like it seems each faction that you're kind of going up against in this game um, are sort of like a commentary on different aspects of society. I'll also say something I'm a little surprised about, especially with like the earlier, um, I guess, gameplay trailers of this, is that it was extremely stylized. And although the art and music and dialogue are all like way more stylized than say like Dishonored was, at least um, in like that weird 60s 70s vibe, the gameplay itself it doesn't really follow that. That the gameplay doesn't have any sort of like real doesn't carry any of that sort of design besides text being in the environment. But like movement, speed, interaction, stuff like that is all still very much within the Arcane pedigree, and not like getting a sort of uh, style injection that wasn't already there. That was the state of play. I'd say overall, it wasn't bad. It just, I think people are really looking forward to like an E3 type um, press, presentation that is like an hour long, that gives you that like robust idea of what you can expect from the hardware. I think there's a lot of management of expectations that they're doing ahead of this, because I think people, and they know, are waiting for that big press announcement. For what it was, I'd say it's pretty good. It sort of hits everything that Sony aims to do in these, but I think we're still waiting for that big uh, press announcement like we're used to seeing around E3 and that we got from Microsoft.